All right. Okay. Shalom, shalom. We are back. We are today going to be dealing with looking at the the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. We want to go into a few things, because when we think about the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at this point, the feast has basically ran its course. At this point, you basically, you ate most of the matzah that you're gonna eat. I think we had about 2 cases of matzah. We down to a partial box now, right? We done ate the matzah that we gonna eat. And at this time we look forward to what is now to come, which is Shavuot. I always say that within Feast of Unleavened Bread is connected to the Feast of Shavuot. And when we understand the spiritual significance of Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, we can understand that these days are all kind of they're their own separate things, but they're also intertwined. One points to the other, right? And so if unleavened bread is about removing the leaven and the sin, and also not only removing it but keeping it out, it's also about you making that decision and deciding to be connected to the Most High, right? Deciding to remove that leaven from your house and getting it out and keeping it out, right? It's about making that decision, right? But looking forward is about that actual connection, right? You've made the decision. You want to do it. You've taken these initial steps of obedience to move forward in the decision that you made. And looking forward now, we're talking about the actual connection being made. And that is represented by and through Shavuot, right? Which represents that joining to the Most High, and also, dealing with the steps getting to Shavuot, kind of deals with spiritual refinement. So we want to look at a few things. I want to talk about really, look at this idea of our spiritual refinement, the things that we kind of get into as we move forward towards Shavuot. And I want to start by looking at a few verses here. Let me pull up the scriptures over here. Let's see. Let me pull this up. Let me find my cursor first of all. Okay, let's. Oh, wait 1 second here. There we go. Okay, read for us verse 9 through 13. Nice and loud.
And Yahweh said to Moshe, "See, I am coming to you in the thick cloud, so that the people hear when I speak with you and believe you forever." And Moshe reported the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moshe, Go to the people and set them apart today and tomorrow, and they shall wash their garments, and shall be prepared by the third day. For on the third day Yahweh shall come down upon Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. And you shall make a border for the people all around, saying, Take heed to yourselves that you do not go up to the mountain or touch the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall certainly be put to death. Not a hand is to touch it, but he shall certainly be stoned or shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. When the Yobel sounds long, let them come near the mountain.
Okay, very good. So when we think about now the context of this verse over here, um, is dealing with Israel coming to the mountain, getting ready to receive the Torah. Right, this is just the preceding verses before Israel is about to be given the 10 words spoken by the Most High. Right, they're getting ready. They're getting ready for the commandments to come down from on high. Right, and then so what I wanted to look at actually is within these verses, we're able to see some things that seem to be kind of some preliminary steps that are to be taken before that meeting, right? Before the Most High is able to come and join with the people, there's some things that the people need to do so that they're able to even receive what it is that the Most High has for them at Shavuot. And so, thinking about Feast of Unleavened Bread, the last day of Feast of Unleavened Bread, looking forward to Shavuot, these verses seem quite fitting because, right now what we're doing is we're looking forward to Shavuot. How do we prepare? Or is it just arbitrary days that go by, just these 7 weeks go by, and, we just get there when we get there and we talk about it whenever we get there. We have we have this little thing that we use. We use it. The kids keep track in terms of where we are. But it got to be more than just thinking about just the days going by, right, and the weeks going by. Yeah. Right, we're getting up there to the 7 weeks being complete up there at 50. We getting down there, but what is it that we are doing in preparation? And I think that when we look over here at these verses, it kind of gives us something that we can think about in terms of the steps that one might take when moving closer to the Most High and preparing to meet with Him in this special way. So I want to look back at these at some things within these verses over here. Okay, so first of all, when we look, let's see here at verse. When we look here, let me get these. Let me get some tools. Let me get some tools up here on the screen so that we can take a closer look at this. Okay, so first of all, this meeting, right, for what's getting ready to happen, the Most High wants to be sure that what is about to happen, He wants to make sure that this thing is that it has long lasting effects, right? He don't want this to be just like a flash in the pan situation. The Most High, is wanting for this to be an eternal, everlasting kind of a thing that he is about to do. And he says, like he says right over here, he said the most, see, I am coming to you he's coming in a thick cloud, so that the people hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. Forever. Right? He wants this thing to be a long lasting situation. He says that he wants this thing to last, he says, forever. That word over there is olam. Olam, when we think about the word olam, it is about over here it says properly concealed, the vanishing point. You know, when you look off in the distance, and you know, you looking down the road and it got like the little V-shaped thing that comes and it goes all the way down into this little point thing until you can't see no more. That's way down there is what he's talking about.
I think about, like, you look out at the ocean.
Yes.
And, you know, or if when we go to Sukkot down in the Smokies, you go to the highest point of the Smokies and you look out and you could like see 4 states or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like hills and hills and hills and hills. It just don't seem like it just, you know, goes on forever.
Right. And so when we think about this idea of olam, it's just that idea. It's about that place that's beyond the spot where you're able to see. Right? You're able to see down to a spot, and then, you know, olam is about that concealed spot that you can't see. The part that's out of mind. Right? You know, the word olam kind of pictures the idea of being hidden and obscured from sight. It's the sight unseen. It's the end that's out of sight. There may be an end to it. There may be in it, but it's so far away that you can't see the thing, right? And so when we're thinking about the interaction that is experienced at Sinai, we want to be able to see the spiritual significance of what is going on. And what we see here actually is this covenant that is about to take place, right? Israel at this time is about to enter into this covenant, right? So we're looking at this verse again, right? He's saying, see, I am coming to you. This word coming is interesting. Bo, which actually to mean, it can mean to come and to go. Bo. Right. So it's this word that you could think about in the idea of being ever present. Right. Is back and forth. It's coming and it's going simultaneously. So you could think about this idea of this ever presence within this idea of Bo, which is coming over here. And that's what the Most High is coming to do, right? In this thick cloud, he's coming in this thick cloud. He's coming to be ever present with his people in this thick cloud. And he's about to have this magnanimous meeting with these people. But the interesting part is it says so that, right? He's doing this. He wants to meet up with the people so that, right? He's having this big thing. He's going to come and dwell and present himself and make himself shown, you know, in a way to these people in this thick cloud on the top of this mountain for a purpose. And it says that the purpose is so that the people may hear, so that they may hear, so that they will hear and believe. He wants the people to hear and believe. Right? So he's showing up, he's coming there. He wants the people to hear and believe what he's getting ready to do. Because the people done already said, whatever you say, we'll do. Hold on, did they already say it at this point? This is verse 9. They might not have said it yet. They might not have said it. Let's see here. A couple minutes. I'm not. Diligently rain, words came, called the elders, spoke. No, they did. Verse 8 is where it said all that Yah said. Oh yeah, okay, right there. Verse 8. Okay, perfect. So they just said we're looking at verse 9. So they just got finished saying it, right? All that Yahweh has spoken, we shall do. And so again, when we talk about him, the Most High speaking, he's making this grand appearance on top of the mountain so that the people are able to hear and believe. So you want to look at this. We talk about Shema all the time, right? But this is what the Most High wants from his people when in preparation for receiving the Ruach or being connected to the Most High. So this is 9. We will look right here. Let's see. Right, we can always think about what Shema is without looking at it, right? But when we look at these definitions, we're able to get these things kind of cemented into our situation. And again, the Most High is asking for these things prior to the actual commands being spoken. He wants to be sure that the people are in a place to both hear and believe. He wants the people to hear, to Shema, to hear intelligently, right? So he want to be able to talk, and he want the words that he's speaking to be understood by the people, right? Because Shema is about hearing intelligently. Because if I'm sitting up here saying, I want you to go upstairs, go in my room, get my charger from beside my bed, and there's a little bit underneath of my bed, close to my nightstand. If I say all that, I've said all these words that I want you to hear what I'm saying, and you got to understand all the words that I'm saying. You got to understand all of the instructions so that you're able to do what I'm saying to do. And so when we think about this idea of Shema, one of the important components of the situation is actually being able to have some type of understanding, right? Because I can't even get to the part of obedience, which is also a part of Shema, hearing intelligently with obedience. I can't get to that part if I don't have that understanding. Understanding is an important component. Because if I'm speaking and all you're getting out of it is gibberish, right? You can't be obedient because you don't understand what I'm saying. And so when I think about kind of the state that the people that believe in here, grab my Bible from out of the state that the people that believe in the Bible are in is an interesting place. because you have a people who want to be obedient, but they lack understanding. So how can they be obedient? You can't. You can't be obedient if you don't understand. Right? So over here, when we talk about this idea of what's going on with Israel at this time, as they're getting ready to receive the laws, as they're about to enter into this covenant, again, the prerequisite to this is Shema, is hearing with intelligence, and that leading into obedience.
Is this like when Yeshua says that those who come to him must come to him as children? Um, a child has to learn, they're on the receiving end of the learning. They're on the receiving end. You teach them, and they're supposed to be learners. You know, when the people come before Yah and for the Most High here, he's saying to hear and to obey and believe.
Yeah.
It's kind of along those same lines.
Yeah. And so and part of that again is the understanding part, which is a part that you have to get to. You have to get to a place of understanding so that you're able to hear and be obedient, which is part of the process. Right? So in the context of what we're looking at in these verses, from when these words are spoken, there's 3 days that's going to go by between when these words are spoken and then when the Most High is coming. But this is 3 days at the end of the 50-day period. Right? This is after they left out of Egypt on their journey up to the mountain. Right? Which they took all of this time that's going by. And so whatever type of preparations, whatever type of kind of spiritual refinement that they already had got into at this place, once they got, again, 3 days away now, there's even more so after that. And so when we think about this from our kind of perspective, when we're meeting up with the Most High, when we're seeking His face, when we're trying to be connected, either for the first time with the Most High, or moving closer to Him in your relationship and your journey, these steps still are relevant. They're still the same, whether you just come into the faith, or you been in the faith for 20 years, right? It's still the same situation where there's this peel back that has to happen when you're seeking to understand more, right? So yes, so it's always about being in that place where you're coming as a child so that you're ready to learn about something. I'm not able to learn whenever I go into a situation, and I already have the answers already. Right? If you've got the answers, worst student ever. Yeah, if you already got the answers, how you supposed to get anywhere, right? You can't. And so again, let's pull up some verses over here, because we're talking about this idea of shemai. And so, we say this all the time over here, right? Hear, O Israel, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh is one. And so, but within this verse, within this verse over here, we the Shema wants to try to help us to understand the nature and the character of the Most High. Where it says, "Hear, O Israel," you're supposed to listen, Israel, and understand. Listen intelligently and understand. And then once our ears have been unstopped, right, and our eyes open to look towards the Most High, then He tells us something about Himself, right? So we're able to learn. Uh, we're able to learn about the character. We're able to learn about the character of the Almighty. We're about to learn. We're able to learn about the characteristics, the nature of the Almighty, and then which brings us down to the next verse where it says, "Here, read this verse right here, verse 5."
And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might.
Okay, so when it gets into this part over here about the love, right, loving Elohim with all your heart, being, and might, we have to first get to the place of understanding who He is first, right? Which is again leaves us at this place of understanding first, right? Hearing intelligently, right? We have to first have this first part happen, right? We see this same thing. We see this same thing over here in verse here. Read verse 2. Read verse 2.
I am Yahweh your Elohim who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery.
All right, so before this is the Ten Commandments right here. Before he gets into all of the things that is required of the people, first he got to say who He is first. So you have to have first that basic understanding of who He is so that you can even move forward. You can't even get to the next step unless you have that first. He says, "I am Yahweh your Elohim" first. I'm the one who just did all of this stuff for you. I just brought you from over there. Oh that's me. That's the one, right? And then so after we do that, now we can talk about all of the things that you're not supposed to be doing and that you are supposed to be doing. Right? And so again, it's the same kind of a process that we see over here dealing with this idea of what He wants to happen first, right? At the beginning of the meeting, at the beginning of the relationship, we have this understanding, right? And so we should, you know, of course, dealing with people who, are just finding out about who the Most High is. Naturally, it's necessary for them to understand, right? But if we want to be able to seek, you know, any type of spiritual refinement, as new people or as old people, as I said, the process is still the same. The first thing we have to do is seek to be able to understand the Most High better, so that we're able to hear intelligently. Right? And it's interesting whenever we look through the scriptures and we see the Most High gives, certain times throughout the scriptures, He gives these certain laws or statutes or commandments, and He don't say it every time. It's not like He don't mean it every time, but sometimes, he gonna say, "I am Yahweh," as like an exclamation point or something, on these different commands that He's putting forth. Why is He doing that? Why is He doing that? I'm saying that it's causing for us to have to look at the Most High closer, so that we can get that better understanding as to who he is to help us in our obedience as we're moving forward. Um, okay, so if we go back, let's see. If we go back to Bereshit, oh wait, we was in Bereshit. We was in Exodus 19. If we go back to our verse, we see that he said, so that the people hear, and believe. And believe. So that's what we want to look at next, is this idea of believing, right? Because this is what he wants again, before the meeting. So this word over here, believe, aman. That word there means to build up or support, to foster as a parent or nurse. Let's see here. Important aspect of this word is right here. Firmness, right? Or faithful. It's interesting that these things are kind of like put together here. They're actually in the context synonymous with each other. Faithfulness is firmness. Trust, to trust or believe, to be permanent. To be permanent. Think back to Shema. How do we get to the place of firmness? The place of being built up, the place of being permanent without understanding. I don't know how you do that. You can't. You can't. The thing that allows you to have that firmness is having the understanding of who the Most High is. That's where the firmness comes from. That's where the ability to trust comes from, right? That's where the faithfulness comes from, is understanding who the Most High is. I mean, look at what he's doing. He's doing this thing. I'm coming to you like this so that you could hear and understand intelligently and be firm. He already did all these 10 plagues before, but the people probably done forgot about all of that stuff already. So now he got to do this other thing at the top of the mountain that's fresh, this new fresh thing, so that the people could see. When we look at Yeshua, and his ministry on the earth, it was the same deal with him. He did all of these things so that people would sit up here and follow him. All of these wonders, these signs and wonders, so that people would sit up here and take notice of what he was doing. Same thing. It's the same exact thing, showing the power of who he was, and the power of who he represented. And so when we think about that, when we think about what's actually going on, it's Yeshua showing himself to the people in a way that causes them to be what? Trusting in who he is, right? And be able to be firm in the faith as it relates to Yeshua. right? If I see that he's over here raising people from the dead, and he's over here making people that's blind be able to see, and people who can't hear is able to speak. I mean, is able to hear. He's doing all these things. His disciples and seen him walk on top of water. He's doing all of these things that yeah, healing leprosy. Right? Leprosy was a thing that was you wasn't healed from leprosy. You had it, and then it just went away. It took its course and it was gone. But wasn't nobody healing nobody from it. And so again, he all of these things that was going on was things that was what was going to cause you to have a deeper understanding of who Yeshua was, which was going to build up your faith in who he was. Okay, let me pull this verse up. I still got a couple verses here. Let's look at a few verses. Okay, read for us. Read for us Romans 10 and 17. Romans 10 and 17. Read that for us.
So then belief comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Elohim.
Okay, very good. So when we think about this idea of having our faith be increased or cemented, it comes by it comes by hearing, which is interesting because when we look at what we see over here with the thing that the Most High wanted for the people to even go through as they were about to get this ruach was to have them be able to hear and believe. And then when we look over here, we see there's kind of a connection over here with faith, which comes by this verse over here by hearing the word of Elohim. So we need that word if we want to have belief be established in our hearts. If we want the word to be established, if we want belief or faith or firmness to be established in our hearts, we must have that word, which again, the word is giving us that understanding, right? It's kind of like a trickle down effect. The more we know about the Most High, the more we know about his character and who he is, the more we know him, the better we're able to trust in him. Psalms. Let's look at the Psalms real quick. Hold on one second. Psalms Psalms 19. So Psalms 19. Psalms 19, read verses 7 through 9. Hold on. Okay, good.
The Torah of Yahweh is perfect, bringing back the being. The witness of Yahweh is trustworthy, making wise the simple. The orders of Yahweh are straight, rejoicing the heart. The command of Yahweh is clear, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yahweh is clean, standing forever. The right rulings of Yahweh are true. They are righteous altogether.
Okay, very good. So even though when we look at these verses, it's done talked about what it talked about. Verse 7, the Torah, the law, uh, the witness, the orders, the commands. Oh, and then it even gets to the fear, it interjects the fear. And then we see over here the right rulings, right? So it has all of these things to say, but it's really only talking about one thing. It's really just talking about the words of the Most High. And all of these things, right, it are incorporated in the word, right? The Torah, of course, is perfect. Why? Because it's explaining to you the character of the Most High. It's putting the character of the Almighty in terms that we're able to deal with and understand, these earthly terms, right? It's taking this spiritual thing and putting it into human terms, right? It says it restores the soul, it brings back the being, right? The witness is the witness, which is again the word. It's trustworthy, right? In making the why simple. All of these things are within the word. But notice when we get that Torah or we get that witness or when we get those orders or we get these commands of the Most High, all of these things are bringing us closer to understanding who the Most High is. All of these things, which is all the word, right, is all bringing us closer to the Almighty, right? So again, when we talk about this idea of moving closer towards the Almighty, one of the integral parts that we have to deal with is understanding His word, being able to know what it is His word is actually saying, right? Because that's the thing that causes rejoicing in our heart, right? Knowing what He does for us. That's the thing that makes us wise. It takes us from being simple to wise, right? That's the one that's the thing that brings enlightenment into our eyes. Is that word, right? And actually, that's the thing that helps for us to have this fear of Yahweh, right? Understanding who He is. Look, standing forever. And so, again, when we think about this idea of getting closer to the Almighty, drawing closer to Him, again, we look back at ancient Israel, we see they put the formula out there for us, right? When we seek to do that, the answer is hearing and believing. The answer is shemaing and amening. Right? It's not rejecting. No. Saying that he don't know what he's talking about. Right. An integral part of drawing closer to the Most High is opening up this book that He left for us, these words that He has left for us, and seeking understanding inside of it. Right? You must be in the word. You got to be in there. And I don't mean listening to or watching some teachings on YouTube. Right? I mean like some real life study time. Right? And again, we're talking about in the context of moving towards Shavuot, right? Shavuot being the outpouring of the Spirit, right? The law in our hearts, activated, right? But again, when we look, the way that faith is increased, the way that our belief is increased is by the word, right? So we and hearing the word, shemaing the word, with shemaing we have to have understanding, right? So we have to know what the book says. We have to know what it says. We don't have to know what somebody said that it says. We have to actually know what it says. Opening up the book. Getting your dictionaries. You know what I'm saying? Getting your lexicons and getting your different reference materials and your highlighters and your notebooks. I guess nowadays you can have all of that stuff in your digital tablet or laptop or something. But you got to have all of those components though, right? Where you're reading what it's saying with understanding. You're understanding the words and we just talking about on the surface level, right? We're not talking about the deep spiritual dimensions of the word. Just reading the words with understanding, which you just could get to that just with a lexicon. But you have to have that in you so that you're able to move forward in what the point of Shavuot, which is to come, is that spiritual refinement. Because again, that only comes by understanding more fully what the character of the Almighty is. Okay, so everybody's study level is not the same, right? But bare minimum, we need to be doing this. You need to be at bare minimum being able to just know what's in the scriptures. You should at least know what it is the Bible says and what it doesn't say. Right? When people sit up here and talk about the Most High, he loves everybody. You got to know what that means. You got to know exactly what that means, right? Because the Bible may have things to say, but then when we put it in the context, it's a fuller situation that's going on that I just was thinking about. I was thinking about it only because of this shirt that I have on, right? No weapon formed against me shall prosper. So that means I can go out here and somebody could hold a gun to me and shoot me and I'm not die. That's what the Bible verse says, right? Right. And if I believe the Bible, then that means I'm actually bulletproof because no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Right. That's what the verse says. It means that, right?
Somebody try to stab you.
Somebody try to stab me. I got what's that stuff? Chain mail. Chain mail just on me because no weapon formed against me shall prosper. We have to seek to be able to understand what the character of the Most High is so that we could know what it is he's trying to tell us in this word. Right? He's not telling us to sit up here and walk in front of bullets when he says no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Right? We have to seek to know what his character is and how he wants for us to move and be. And again, without you go opening up this book, and looking and seeking to understand, you're gonna be walking around here and doing things that you think is according to the scriptures, but it's not really, because you don't have a full understanding of what the full what the full book is giving you, right? We just have these catchphrases, that we hold on to, right? So again, when we think about the idea of moving towards Shavuot, these are the things that we want to, you do whatever you do throughout the year, but this is a special time where the Most High has put in place this idea of spiritual refinement, where whatever you're doing, you're supposed to do more at that time. People sit up, you have your whatever you do, and that's all fine and good. But this is a special set apart time where he calls for us to count these complete Sabbaths, to pay attention to these times that are going forward, because at the end is this meeting at the foot of the mountain. And so again, we think about these things from a spiritual perspective. How do we understand that better? It's about drawing closer to the Most High and doing those things necessary to draw closer, which we just looked was shemaing and amening, right? Hearing with understanding and obedience and firmness and believing. So let's look at John. Let's look at John 14. John 14 and 26. What's that say?
But the Helper, the set apart Spirit.
Oh, hold on 1 second. 1 second. Let me put this up on the screen here. Okay, go ahead.
But the Helper, the set apart Spirit, whom the Father shall send in my name, he shall teach you all, and remind you of all that I said to you.
Okay, very good. Hold on 1 second. Let me. Read 24 and 25.
He who does not love me does not guard my words, and the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father who sent me. These words I have spoken to you while still with you.
Okay, very good. So when we look at this now, Yeshua is about to go away and send back the Ruach. And he says that the Ruach is going to teach you all and remind you of all that I said to you. And then he also said up here that the stuff that he said to the people was actually the words that his father had said for him to say. So he spoke his father's words to the people. And then when he sent the Spirit back, the Spirit was going to remind all the people of all the words that he said. And so it's interesting when we see that over there, because again, now the Spirit is pulling from something. The Spirit is teaching the people based on what is already inside of them. And so if there's nothing inside of you, what is it able to teach you? It's not able to teach you anything. When we look back again, we looked at the Psalms. The Torah of Yahweh is perfect, restoring the soul. So you get that word up inside of you, and then now you mixing that with the Ruach HaKodesh. That's restoring your soul, because it's bringing you to an understanding of who the Most High is, and it's showing you his will and his ways for your life.
I mean, that's the same. Anyone who knows about Hebraic concepts knows about the shadows and the fulfillments of the shadows. So you get a shadow and then you get a fulfillment. You know, you get Yeshua talking to his disciples in parables, and then in that 40 days he's walking the earth. When he comes back, he's teaching them where he is in the Torah, and also giving them deeper understanding on what they already have heard, what they already have, read.
The Ruach HaKodesh is bringing you that application to the word. It's bringing you that application to the word, but the word got to be in you first. You know, when Paul talks about the law and refers to it as a schoolmaster, he's doing that for a reason, because the school, just like you sit up here and you go to school and you supposedly get taught all of these things that get you ready for the real world, right? You go and the schoolmaster teaches you how to live your life, but then now you got to go out and then actually live it. So the same thing is true with the law. We have to learn who the Most High is and get into his character and his will with understanding, so that our belief and our firmness in him can grow. And then mixing that with the Ruach HaKodesh, now we're able to move forward in all of this, right? And I talked about this. I talked about this before. We have to be able to get to the place of being able to distinguish in our minds our voice and the Most High's voice. We have to get to that place. And if you don't have that foundation of the word in you, then how can the distinction be made? You know, I could sit up and say, well, I feel led to do this or that. And when you talk to people and they say that, that's like that's their thing. Like if the Most I said you do it, then what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say to that? Like, you can't say nothing to people. You can't say nothing once they said, well, the Most High said for me to do it. But the thing that allows you to be able to say something about that is the fact that when you know what the character of the Most High is, and this thing that this person's sitting up here talking about is this thing that goes against the word, now we got a problem. When we look at
that person will say no weapon formed against me.
yeah.
And then have somebody with COVID cough on them or something.
Yeah. Let's see here. So without looking at the whole chapter of chapter 14 of 1 Corinthians, I can just talk about it when we think about it, and then now you could go behind me and look at it yourself, right? But when we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14, it's talking about prophecy in the assemblies, right? And so the Most High will give a prophecy to someone, and then now we're looking for 2 or 3 witnesses to come behind it, right? If somebody has a prophecy, you need some interpretation to this thing, and then then they judge the prophecy. And so we're able to see, when you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14, there's the spirit in the body working. where the Most High says something to one person, and then the person says to the other people what the Most High said, and then maybe somebody, the Most High said the same thing to somebody else. Now you got a witness, right? And so you see the operation of the gifts working kind of in unison and tandem with each other. Not one person sitting up there saying, he told me to do thus and so. And then the other person looking at that and judging it according to the word. And it's something that's like it don't really kind of jive with the scriptures. And right. And so again, when we think about this idea of what we saw with John chapter 14, verse 26, where Yeshua is talking about what this Ruach is going to do, again, it is enlivening the word, right? It's bringing to life the word of Yahweh. It's not doing this other thing that's contrary to that. And that's something that we have to be able to understand. And again, putting this in the context of the seasons moving towards Shavuot, when we should be striving to be spiritually refined, moving closer, having things removed, understanding Yeshua better, so that we're able to move up higher, so we'll be able to be closer to him, so that we're able to walk upright in his will and in his ways, so that we could be a light to the nations. But it all begins with understanding the Most High and becoming or fortifying our firmness. I want to talk about the spirit a little bit, because if we look at Second Corinthians, it's interesting because the spirit has to grow in us. The spirit has to grow in us. Second Corinthians 1, 2 Corinthians 1 and 22. Wait a second. Read 21 and 22.
But he who establishes us with you in Messiah and has anointed us is Elohim, who also sealed us and gave his spirit in our hearts as a pledge.
Okay, so verse 22 has also sealed us, and this is what I want to look at here, and gave the spirit in our hearts as a pledge. This is an interesting word here. The King James says who giving the earnest. It says the earnest of the spirit in our hearts. This word here, earnest. Here, actually, before we look at what this word means, let's look at this also in 2 Corinthians 5 and 5. We'll look at a couple of verses that use this word, and then we'll look at the word. 5 and 5. What's that say?
Now he who has prepared us for this same purpose is Elohim, who has given us the Spirit as a pledge of what is to come.
Okay, same word here. The scripture says pledge. The King James calls it an earnest of the Spirit. And then one more let's see here. Ephesians 1 and 13. What's that? 13. Read these two verses here.
In whom you also, having heard the word of the truth, the good news of your deliverance, in whom also, having believed, You were sealed in the set apart spirit of promise, who is the pledge of our inheritance until the redemption of the purchased possession to the praise of his esteem.
Okay, very good. So let's see here. Let's see. In this verse, I think it's 14 where it's used, which is the earnest of our inheritance. The other two verses we looked is the earnest of the spirit. This word here is in the Greek is arhabon, which is interesting because oftentimes we look in the Greek, and then it gives you these these Greek words, and then it explains for you a Hebrew um, concept using Greek. But over here, they don't do that, right? They just kind of transliterate the Hebrew, right? This word is a word that's based off of it's of Hebrew origin. It's not even Greek, which means a pledge that is part of the purchase money or property given in advance as security for the rest, like a down payment, right? So an earnest is like a down payment. It's not the full money; it's a down payment, right? When we think about, I owe you $100. I'm gonna give you this 20 as a down payment. It's not the whole money; it's a down payment to show that I'm gonna give you the rest. I am gonna give you the rest, and just so you don't think that I'm gonna run around here and just be owing you, I'm gonna give you this so that you know that there's more coming. There's more to come. And so when we think about this, this is how Paul describes the spirit. The earnest, he says, of the spirit. In 2 Corinthians, he said, who has you're sealed, you have been sealed, and gives the earnest of the spirit in our hearts. So you got this down payment of the spirit in our heart. You hear people sit up here and talk about, well, we're not in the new covenant because I still got to be taught by somebody. So the new covenant says I'll no longer need a teacher. And so therefore, this ain't the new covenant. Not to get into all of that, but I'm saying that over here, when we talk about even the spirit being in us, it's an earnest of the spirit that's in us, right? It's a portion of the spirit that's in us. It's a seed, it's a down payment that needs to grow in us.
Like he said, he's going to grow in us if we let him.
And then something that's interesting about this word that we find in the Greek that actually is Hebrew. Let me pull it up. Is its origins, is its roots. This word here again, bone, which comes from Arab. Interesting. Which means to braid, that is intermix. So when we think about the evening, right? How the evening is a rev, where it is the mixture of light and darkness, or I guess even the morning is the same thing, but Erev is the coming in of the darkness and the going out of the light, but it's still dealing with the mixture. It's the mixture, right? And so when we think about this seed, this earnest of the spirit in us, it reminds me of Romans. It reminds me of Romans chapter 8 and verse 16. Read that.
The Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of Elohim.
So even the very nature of how this even thing works is where we have our spirit inside of us that is mixed, with the Ruach HaKodesh inside of us, as an earnest of the spirit that grows inside of us. But it's interesting that even just the dynamic of how it works inside of us speaks to the word itself that's used to bring this point forth, is this word that deals with this idea of this mixture, this idea of this word that is a part of the whole being added to your situation to grow and change you. And then also when we think about Yeshua, it talks about Yeshua in a different way. When we look at Yeshua in John chapter 3 and 34, what's that say?
For he whom Elohim has sent speaks the word of Elohim, for Elohim does not give the Spirit by measure.
When we look at Messiah's situation was different, where he didn't have the Spirit given to him by measure, like how we are given the Spirit by measure. We have an earnest of the Spirit. But Yeshua, it said, Elohim gives not the Spirit by measure unto him. Right? But there's a difference. Right. And so when we think about ourselves, people sit up here and say, well, I got the Ruach just like you. I got the Ruach just like you. And my spirit didn't ever say that, not like that to me. This is again the thing that's key about these times, where we have to understand that we all need to be refined and grow in the spirit. He has divvied up the spirit out to us all by measure. We have a earnest of the spirit, a down payment of more to come, right? He put a down payment on us, right? And that thing grows the more we put into it. The more we put in it, the more it has to draw from, the more that we're able to understand and move into the likeness of Messiah. We have to be able to understand these things. So again, when we think about this idea of where we are in terms of moving forward toward Shavuot, we have to be in the mode of feeding our spirit, right? Because when we think about Shavuot, this feast is this feast is about refining raw materials, right? When we go to Leviticus chapter 23, we go to Leviticus 23, where it talks about the Feast of Weeks, which we're in the process of counting these weeks. Now we're counting these days. Read 16 and 17 here.
Until the morrow after the seventh Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Bring from your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour that are baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahweh.
Okay, so again, when we think about this idea of moving towards this time, we notice in verse 17 that Shavuot is about bringing these 2 loaves of bread, right? And when we talk about bread, We're talking about refined ingredients. We're talking about taking ingredients, putting them in a pot, stirring them up together. This even got leaven in it. We're putting some leavening in it, so it gotta sit, it gotta grow, it gotta get pushed down, it gotta grow some more.
Water.
Is water in there? I don't know what they do when they make that stuff, but it's a process. It's a process. And so when we think about it again,
It's not even like, it's not matzah that takes 18 minutes.
Yeah, matzah could be done in 18 minutes. But bread can take hours. It can take hours to make some good bread. You're letting that stuff rise and proof and all of that stuff. I don't know. I don't know how to make bread.
Matzah should take 18 minutes or less.
Yeah. But this thing over here that it says is baked with leaven is different. And so that's the thing that shows us that Shavuot is about refining raw materials. It's about transformation and preparing for transformation, right? Getting ready to go from one state to the next, right? And so again, when we think about this from a spiritual perspective, we can't just show up at Shavuot and magically have bread that we're ready to wave. There got to be a process in order to get to that place. And again, when we think about the commandments are spiritual. They're holy and they're pure and they're spiritual. And so when we think about this from a spiritual perspective, we have to put into place these things that the Most High showed us all the way back at Sinai, where he called for the people to be able to hear and to be firm. And then he also said for them to make a border to make sure they didn't cross before it was time for them to cross. Huh? The border, I'm saying, the foot of the mountain, I'm saying. But there was a border that they had to make. It says it right over there. And so when you think about all of these things, again, in the context of preparing for Shavuot, it's about preparation. It's about getting ready for things.
They didn't just show up at Shavuot.
No, you wasn't.
They had a 3-day purification.
It wasn't about just showing up. You didn't just show up. You wasn't just coming to the thing, and then you was there, right? You got ready. And so I'm saying from a spiritual perspective, kind of just wrapping this up here, from a spiritual perspective, we want, it's early. This is what we want to be doing as we move forward towards Shavuot, is dealing with refining the spirit, right? Dealing with moving towards the outpouring of the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, right? Whatever it is that you do at this time, if we about refinement, that's what you normally do. But what about what you do right now? Right? This is what we got to get into. If you already reading, so many chapters a day, then for this over here, that's what you normally do. You always do that, right? But what are you doing for your spiritual refinement, moving forward towards Shavuot? Because again, when we think about Shavuot, it's about understanding the Most High better and becoming more firm in your belief towards Him, right? These are the things that we have to be doing at this time so that we're able to represent a people that have been sanctified, as was instructed for Moses to get the people, even at the first time over there at Sinai. Let me just look at this one last verse here. Which is in Ephesians 5. $25. Okay, so Ephesians 5:25 says, "Husbands, love your wives as Messiah did love the assembly and gave himself for it, in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word." And if we go down 32, "This secret is great, but I speak concerning Messiah and the assembly." He's not here talking to you about man and wife, and it really means man and wife, but also it means Messiah and the assembly. And so when we think about us as the assembly in regards to being set apart and cleansed, which is another component that was over there in Exodus chapter 19 in terms of readying ourselves. When we think about the idea of sanctification and cleansing, we always get back to this same thing over here, which is the word. The word is the thing that cleanses us. The word is the thing that washes us. The word is the thing that sets us apart. The word is the thing that establishes and fortifies our faith. The word is the thing that gives us understanding to be able to know who the Most High is, so that we can hear and be obedient to the things that He's saying. At the end of the day, it's about getting more in depth into the word, which helps you to understand the character of the Most High, so that you're able to be washed and cleansed and fortified in His word, so that you're able to be refined and be that offering that's made and waved before the Most High. It's interesting when we think about this wave offering, that you get the ingredients, you put it together, you mix it, you do all the things, you make it, and then you offer it to the Most High. He gave you all the ingredients He gave you. You put it together, and then you give it back. And it's the same situation with yourself, right? He provides for you all the things that's going to cause you to be able to be this offering that's acceptable in His sight. And then, but once He's given you all of those ingredients and things, then you offer that thing back. But of course, you have to get to that place first. And again, that's what we're dealing with here with Shavuot. So let's see where we at today. Today we're on day 4. Right? So we didn't even reach a complete week as of yet. Right? So there's plenty of time for you to put in place in your individual situations what you gonna call for yourself to be doing to be to be growing that down payment that the Most High done put on your spirit, right? I can't tell you, how you supposed to do that, but I'm saying that at bare minimum, we saying that that word is that main ingredient. And so however it is in your situation that you can intensify whatever it is that you already doing, I'm saying that's what you should be doing so that you're able to prepare the way that we saw as an example how the Most High told Moses to tell the people to prepare when they were going forward with the first Shavuot. And we want to just keep that going and carry that idea onto the whatevereth Shavuot that we're at now in 2020, right? So
keep that leaven out of your spirit.
Yeah. And yeah, so the sin we keep it out. But now over here now we got this other thing that leavens the loaf. That is that, and we want that to blow up, right? And over there we talking about that spirit in us, right? So there's something that's rising up in us, but it's not that sin. We getting that out, but we want this other thing to rise up, which is that Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, so that being said, we want to leave that with you for this last day of Feast of Unleavened Bread. And we want for everybody to have a joyous feast season, right? Because we in the season, even though it's the end of the Feast of Unleavened Bread tonight. Again, we in this business of counting these weeks up until Shavuot. There's an anticipation with the counting, and so again, make the most of this counting of these weeks, and just continue to move forward in the Messiah. Okay, so that being said, we will for now say shalom, and then y'all willing, we will be back on the weekly Shabbat.